Hello everyone, and welcome to Once Before Dawn. I am the storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also comment, where are you from and what time are you watching? The Whispering Throne. In the cold halls of Veilguard, the black throne stood untouched. It rose like a jagged wound in the center of the great hall, a monstrosity of obsidian and twisted iron, forged in dragonfire and sealed with the blood of tyrants. For 10 years it had remained empty, yet those who walked near it swore they heard whispers. Some said it was wind through the stones, others that it was the throne itself, remembering the screams of kings. Regent Howrick Thorne sat at the long table near the dais, bloated from wine and too many easy years. He clutched a goblet carved from whalebone, his rings clinking softly as he raised it to trembling lips. "I hear them again," he muttered. Sir Durong Thorne stood nearby, arms crossed over his breastplate. A knight in his father's shadow, lean and battle-scarred, yet dismissed by courtiers as a restless fool. "You hear voices, father," Durong said. "You've kept the crown empty too long." Howrick turned to him with wine-wet lips. "Do not presume to judge me, boy. I've kept this realm from falling into war. The Vayner wolves would tear us to bone. The Malewind snakes would poison our sons. And the Dravaiths, gods help us, their lion would roar again if given breath." "They already roar," Darren said, low and grim. "Sir Kyela Dravaith is on the move. She rides north. And word from Gallowspire says Lord Auric has summoned his banners." Howrick blanched. Then the game begins again. The wind howled through the spires of Gallowspire, curling around black stone and frozen banners like a serpent in mourning. Snow fell in lazy spirals, but no one dared call it peaceful. Not in the north, not under House Vaynar's rule. Lord Auric Vaynar stood on the upper battlements, his silver hair tied back, his cloak lined with direwolf fur. He watched the horizon as the sky bled amber into dusk. Below, the courtyard bustled with the thunder of boots. His bannermen had come, answering the call inked in blood and sealed with the ancient mark of the Frostborn. 17 banners, murmured Ser Arben, captain of the Vaynar Guard. "More than I expected, fewer than we need." "They'll come," Ulrich said. "Fear is a greater summons than love, and the others fear what's to come." "Prepare what's to come," Arben frowned. "The girl rides north?" Ulrich nodded once. "Kayla Dravath, the lion's daughter. She crosses the veil with 3,000 swords and a grudge older than her birth. What's her aim? The same as all the rest. The Black Throne." A silence hung between them, heavy with memory. Then Ulrich spoke again, quieter now. "She thinks she can claim it with fire. Let her try. The North remembers the last time a Southerner came for our crown. Just then, the horn sounded thrice from the western tower. Arvan's hand went to his sword. "Scouts returning?" Ulrich narrowed his eyes. "No, it's the old call. We have a rider from the Weeping Coast." The Weeping Coast was no friend to Gallowspire. If they sent riders, it meant one of two things, war or prophecy. Ulrich turned without a word, descending the stone steps like a shadow. Inside the keep, the fires burned low and blue. A Vaynar trick, a mixture of oils that preserved heat but gave no smoke. Even their hearths were quiet, but gave no smoke. In the audience chamber, the rider waited. She was cloaked in sealskin, her boots wet with salt water and sand. Her face was marked with blue runes, and her eyes glowed faintly with a flickering, unnatural sheen. She bowed low, but not out of respect. It was ritual. "I'd bring a message from the Sibyls of Tern," she said. Ulrich studied her. "Speak it!" The woman's voice shifted, no longer hers alone. A dozen tones wove through it, layered like wind through trees. "When the throne whispers, the blood of kings shall burn. When 3 banners rise, the dead shall learn to walk. Beware the child born beneath the moonless tide. The black flame wakes." The room turned cold. Even Arven took a step back. Ulrich didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to the fire, watching its blue flame flicker. "So it begins," he whispered. In the violet twilight of Maromir, the towers of House Malewind shimmered like ghostlight. Built on stilts above black waters thick with lilies and leeches, the fortress seemed to float, graceful, deceptive, deadly, just like the woman who ruled it. Lady Cyrene Malewind reclined upon a couch of swan feathers, draped in silk the color of bruised wine. her silver blonde hair coiled like smoke over her shoulders, her fingers lazily twirling a long obsidian pin etched with runes too old for any scholar to name. The chamber around her was quiet, but not empty. 3 men stood in shadow. None dared speak until she gestured with the faintest lift of her hand. "You failed me," she said sweetly. "Again." The first man, clad in green velvet in desperation, stepped forward. "My lady, the courier never made it past the Vayner border. They're wolves," Cyrene clicked her tongue. "Wolves? You let yourself be bested by dogs?" Her voice turned sharp. "Did you think I'd built my name on excuses, Galian? I became the widow of 9 dukes by outliving men stronger than you. You think their blades spared me out of pity?" Galian bowed so low his lips brushed the cold marble. The second man, older with a scholar's robe and a cautious mouth, tried to intercede. "There is news from the south, lady. The lion's daughter rides." Cyrene smiled. "Yes, let Keala come. Her father burned our vineyards. Her brother poisoned my cousin. I wonder which of her limbs I'll take as payment." A woman cloaked in green leather, her face hidden behind a lacquered mask. She placed a scroll on the obsidian table. "It came this morning, from Hollowspire." Cyrene raised an elegant brow and unfolded the scroll with careful fingers. Her eyes scanned the runes, dark lashes fluttering only once. "Interesting," she murmured. She rose from the couch, moving with the slow grace of a serpent preparing to strike. At the window, the waters of Merrowmere rippled under the moonlight. "Oh, They found something beneath the ruin," she said. "A thing that bleeds fire," Galleon dared ask. "A dragon?" "No," Cyrene whispered. "Worse." She turned, her pale eyes shining like blade edges. "The world stirs. Ulrich sharpens his knives. Keala arms her legions. Even the throne groans for blood, but none of them see what I see. While they look skyward, chasing fire and prophecy, I listen to what lives beneath." The masked woman bowed deeply. What would you have us do?" Cyrene's fingers brushed the rune pen against her lip, thinking. "Send for Valera," she said. Galian's voice caught. "The sea witch?" Cyrene smiled. "Let the undrowned rise." Dust curled in the air like smoke as Kayla Draveth dismounted in the village of Rin's Hollow. What remained of the town barely deserved the name. Just a cluster of burnt hovels and one broken well, scorched earth yawning where homes had once stood. Her boots crushed ash beneath their weight, and every step stirred whispers of the dead. She stood tall, her silhouette a jagged streak of blackened steel, armor forged in the dragon forges of Erlen, passed down from her grandfather, the last Draveth king who had sat upon the black throne. Grief, her blade, hung at her hip like a shadow with an edge. Behind her, 400 riders waited in uneasy silence. The banners of House Draveth Golden Lion on a field of crimson snapped in the northern wind, but the people were gone, and there were no cries to greet them, only crows. "Raiders," said Serenic, dismounting beside her. "They came through 3 days ago, took the food, left the bones." Kayela didn't reply immediately. She knelt by the remains of a small cradle, charred black. "Not raiders," she said at last. Serenic frowned. "Then who?" She rose and turned her eyes northward to the snow-blurred horizon. "Ulrich?" The word fell like a blade. Rennick hesitated. "But there's no sign of siege, no storming force." "No," Kayla murmured. "He sent his code, and the code does not leave walls standing." The air grew still. Even the horses grew uneasy. "He's warning me," she said. "He wants me to know the north belongs to him." Rennick looked toward the mountain pass that would take them to Gallowspire. "If we ride fast, we might reach his borders before the storm thickens." Kayela's hand brushed the hilt of her sword. "No," she said, "we make for Hollowspire. If the rumors are true, if the old fires stir beneath the mountain, then we need what sleeps there." He hesitated. "You believe the tales, that the earth cracked and wept flame? I believe in anything that can burn the north clean," she said, her voice sharp as frost. Then she turned back to the ruined cradle. Her fingers brushed a fragment of charred cloth. Once, pale blue, a child swaddling. Kayla closed her eyes. "For every life taken in my father's name, I will return a storm." She remounted. The army turned east, and far above them, circling in the high winds like a vulture stitched of smoke, something ancient watched. The path to Hollowspire was broken long before war ever touched it. Once a thriving trade route that ferried silver, spellglass, and whispers of ancient things from the deep. Now it was little more than a narrow canyon, flanked by cliffs that wept black water and cliffs where nothing living grew. They said the mountain had once been alive with fire, that it had bled flame before the age of kings, before even the language of dragons was carved into stone. Kaila Dravit's column moved slowly, warily. The high crags above made perfect places for ambushes. Yet no bandits came, no wolves, not even birds. It was too quiet. Rennick rode at her side, his brow furrowed as they approached the mouth of the mountain. "Even the wind doesn't breathe here." Kaela said nothing. Instead, her eyes lingered on the entrance to the hollow spire itself. A great split in the rock face, wide enough for 3 wagons, ringed in symbols no scholar could translate. Melted stone, blackened earth. Heat pulsed faintly from the wound in the mountain, though the world outside was cold enough to freeze marrow. A small camp waited near the entrance. Rough tents, tired fires, a dozen miners and scouts, dirt-streaked and hollow-eyed. The leader stepped forward, an old woman with a bowed back and one blind eye. She bowed low, her hair coiled like rope. "Your Grace," she said, her voice dry as paper. "We tried to go deeper, lost too, heard things, felt, watching." "And the flame?" The old woman nodded slowly. "It breeds, down in the bones of the world, not like fire from wood or coal, no smoke, just hunger and heat." Kayla turned to Rennick. "Prepare the torches, I go in." "My lady," he said, alarm rising. "Alone?" "This isn't a place for swords," she replied. "It's a place for blood, and I carry enough of it." She took nothing but her blade and a single torch, lighting it from the strange blue fire the miners had coaxed from the cracks. Then she stepped into the dark. The cave walls were slick with ancient heat. Strange shapes bulged from the stone-twisted bones, half-melted metal, runes scorched into the granite itself. As she moved deeper, the air thickened, hot, alive. She heard the whisper first, faint, lingering. "Kaela, Kaela." Visions hit her all at once, a throne of black stone cracking in half, a lion consumed by ice, a woman made of seawater screaming beneath the moon. And at the center, a great eye, lidless and burning, watching her through the world's own skin. Then it stopped. The mountain went still. Kaela dropped to her knees, breath heaving. But she was not afraid. "I am the storm," she whispered. "Not your prey." The fire answered. The breath of the mountain was fire without smoke, heat without light. Kayla stood in its deepest chamber, her torch flickering blue in defiance of the red glow pulsing from the stone beneath her boots. The ground was glassy here, melted in some ancient fury, then cooled by time and silence. Beneath her, at the base of a spiral path scorched into the rock, sat the altar. It wasn't built. It had grown, jagged and obsidian, shaped like something that had burst from the earth mid-scream. Chains dangled from its flanks, rusted manacles, bones fused to stone. It was a place meant for sacrifice. Kaela approached, sweat sliding beneath her armor. The heat was unbearable now, blistering even through dragon steel. Yet she did not falter. The visions hadn't lied. The altar pulsed once, and then a voice spoke, not from above, nor from the walls, but from inside her chest. "Blood answers blood," she gritted her teeth. Then it moved. The altar cracked open like a gaping wound, and from within rose a figure. Not a man, not quite. It was tall, as if stretched by fire, skin the color of scorched iron. Its eyes were molten, swirling pits of gold and orange, and its breath came in slow, embered sighs. Kaela didn't flinch. "What are you?" the thing smiled. "I am what your ancestors buried, what your blood forgot. I am the last breath of the Hollow Kings." She tightened her grip on her sword. "I didn't come to be ruled." "No," it agreed. "You came to rule." It circled her slowly. "You are not like the others, the lion who limps, the wolf who sleeps, the snake that smiles. You were born beneath thunder, with death braided into your hair. I felt your soul before your breath." Kaela stared it down. "I came for power. Enough to break the Vanar. Enough to take the Black Throne." The thing's eyes narrowed. "And what will you give?" She didn't hesitate. "Everything but my name." Then it opened its hand. Fire coalesced into a shard of black metal, still glowing at its edges. "A gift," it said, "but gifts have teeth." She took it. Pain lanced through her hand, but she didn't scream. The fire bled into her veins. The flame answered. When Kayla emerged from the mountain, the sky had darkened. Thunder rolled across the high cliffs. Rennick ran to her, stopping short when he saw her eyes. They glowed faintly gold. "You were gone 3 days," he said. Kayla blinked. "To me," she whispered. It felt like hours. Behind her, the mouth of the hollow spire steamed. Stone wept fire. She looked at her palm, where the shard had vanished, leaving only a faint scar shaped like an eye. "We march," she said. "To Gallows Spire?" "No," she said. "Let Ulrich rot in his snow. The throne sits unclaimed, and the realm forgets what fire can do." Her voice was steady. "We ride for Vale God." Meanwhile, in the court of the north, Ulrich Venar stood in silence, watching snow fall across the graveyard of his kin. Ravens shifted along the crooked headstones. He held a letter in his gloved hand. It had arrived sealed in wax shaped like a lion's head, cracked in half. He read it again, though he knew the words by heart. "The fire has awakened, and I walk where kings once bled. The mountain named me. The flame obeyed. Tell your gods to tremble, old wolf. Jack!" "I do not seek peace. I seek the throne." It was unsigned, but he knew the hand. Kayla. Ulrich crushed the letter in his fist. "Summon the icebound," he told Arvin, "and wake the white host." Arvin blinked. "But my lord, they've slept since the frost pact. They'll march again." He turned to the mountains. "The game has begun." The sea was quiet, but Valera knew better. Still waters were never calm. They were waiting. The sea was quiet, but Valera knew better. Still waters were never calm. The moon hung low and blood-red over the broken shoals as the tide receded, revealing black coral forests, twisted like frozen screams. Somewhere in the distance, a whale exhaled through the dark. Closer, the crew of the Mother's Teeth worked in silence, heads bowed, eyes averted from the prow. She stood there, Valera of the shoals, Valera the undrowned, barefoot, salt clinging to her skin like a second soul. Her armor was no armor at all, only a mantle of kelp and netting, scaled with shards of mirror shell and sea glass. Her hair was tangled with bone charms. Around her neck, a chain of finger bones, once belonging to Maelwind spies who dared betray her. Beside her, a boy no older than 12 held a conch bowl filled with brine and teeth. The tide pulled back farther. Valera raised her arms to the wind, and it died in her presence. "My mother," she intoned, "was the sea, her voice the storm, her womb the depths. I am the breath she stole back from the land." The boy tilted the bowl, and the salt water trickled over her feet. Then she knelt and dipped her fingers into the teeth. "The land calls to me again." From behind her a voice whispered, "The message was true?" Valera turned her head slightly. A woman stepped forward wearing the green silks of Marrowmere, the same sigil shaped into her brooch, the broken eye of House Maelwyn. Her face was narrow, and her expression thinner still. "The widow calls you home," the emissary said. "Cyrene Maelwyn asks for your return. She says the throne awakens." Valera said nothing at first. Her eyes watched the horizon. Then she laughed low, rippling like surf over stone. "Cyrene forgets," she said. "She cast me out before the salt had dried from my lips. She said I was half-thing, witch-born. Too deep for her courts. She says the realm needs you." Valera turned then, and for a moment the moonlight caught her face fully, and the emissary recoiled. Where her left eye should have been was a shell, smooth and pale, grown into the bone. When she spoke, her voice no longer sounded fully human. "She needs a weapon. She needs a queen," the woman said. Valera's gaze was cold. She had a realm, and she fed it to wolves. "I swam when her ship sank. I drank deep when her lords bled dry. The sea never asked me to kneel. Why should she?" The emissary dared a final offer. "She promises you blood, Venar blood, Draveth blood. She names you rightful heir to the Maelwyn line." Valera's head tilted. The tide was rising again. "The throne is stone and lies and steel. I have salt and bone and tide. Let her keep her whispers." And yet her fingers traced the old scar across her ribs, a wound dealt by a northern blade years ago. She remembered the code. The wound dealt by a northern blade years ago. She remembered the drowning. Cyrene had let it happen. Valera had survived it. Now the waves had stilled again. She looked out across the sea, where the lights of 100 ships waited, her fleet carved from drowned hulls and oaths, crewed by bastards and reavers, by women broken by courts and men with nothing left to burn. "I will answer her summons," Valera said. The emissary exhaled with relief. "But tell her this." Valera turned, the wind returning all at once, screaming through the sails. "If she dares chain me again, I will flood her house from within." The sea shuddered in answer. The tide had returned. The sun scorched the walls of Highstone, the seat of House Draveth, but within the keep, shadows clung like secrets. Once the jewel of the southern marches, its red stone towers now stood cracked and faded, stained with soot from old sieges and rebellion fires. Vines crept up the battlements. The great lion standard that once flew proud over its tallest spire was ragged, torn in the middle. Lord Cedar Draveth, once called the Bright Flame, now sat in a wheeled throne carved from ironwood. The lion's head sigil burned into its back. Age had taken one leg and half his fire, but not his mind. His eyes were sharp as broken glass, and they swept the war council with a hunger that had not faded with time. "She awakens the mountain," he said. "And you would sit here, speaking of grain?" His voice cracked like dry bark. Around the table, southern lords shifted uncomfortably. Baron Thane of Windbarrow spoke first, his fat fingers tapping nervously against his cup. "Kayla has not sent word, not since she passed through Rin's Hollow. She could be dead." Ulrich would string her bones across the mountain path and send her armor back stuffed with snow. The table fell silent. Lord Sidor's remaining hand gripped the arm of his chair, veins bulging. "She lives," the mountain flame answers her. A soft voice spoke next, and all turned to look. "My lord father is right," said Melis Draveth. The youngest daughter, veiled in midnight blue, leaned forward. Her eyes were dark as ink and just as deep. "And one Magus would dark as ink and just as deep." Though only 17, her tongue was sharp as her sister's sword and far more dangerous. She did not need armor to wound. "The Vanar stir," Melis continued. "Gallowspire has summoned the icebound. The male winds whisper through the waters again. Even the regents in Veilguard hire foreign sellswords, their banners doubling by the week." "Then we must ride north," said Ser Derek, Zador's cousin. "Put Kayla at our front and claim the throne before the wolves can dig in." "We do not ride yet," Thane blinked. "But if the fire is truly..." "We wait," she said. Lord Sador's eyes narrowed. "Why?" Melis stood. Her footsteps were soft against the cold stone floor as she walked toward the map table. She placed her hand lightly over the carving of Veilguard. "Because this isn't about who arrives first. It's about who remains standing once the others tear themselves apart." She moved her hand north. "Let Ulrich bury his dead in snow. Let Ulrich bury his dead in snow. Let Valera flood the coasts and drown the weak. Let Cyrene drink poison and smile. When the others are ash, Kayela will still be fire, and we will be ready." Sidor's mouth curled into something between a smile and a grimace. "You play the long game." Melis looked down at her hand, small, elegant, steady. From the shadows came a figure robed in gray, face hidden behind a carved mask of weeping wood. "I told you never to come here," she whispered. The figure bowed. "And yet you summoned me." Melis didn't look at him. The flame rises. She walks the path. But she does not know the price. The figure said nothing. Melis turned, her expression unreadable. "Send word to Hollowspire. Tell the Flamebound, if she takes the throne before I give the word, he... Extinguish her!" The masked figure vanished like breath. The candle flickered. Melis watched it die. Deep beneath Gallowspire, where the sun had never touched, and even torchlight bent strangely in the dark, lay the crypts of the Icebound. It was not a place of rest. It was a vault of war. Lord Ulrich Vanar stood before the sealed arch of the lower crypt, his breath clouding in the cold air. Frost covered every stone, growing outward from the gate like veins from a dead heart. Beside him, Sir Arvin clutched a lantern whose flame burned green, a blend of old alchemy and Vanar bloodcraft. Has it been open since the frost pact? Arvin asked, voice barely more than a whisper. Alrek didn't answer. His gloved hand traced the runes carved into the stone, a language older than Dragorn, older than the Vayner name itself. No key would open this gate, only blood. He drew a knife and sliced deep into his palm. With a thunderous groan, the crypt door shuddered. The runes glowed blue, then white, then vanished entirely as the wall receded inward, revealing a stair that twisted into blackness. A foul, frigid wind rushed out, carrying with it the scent of ancient decay and bitter metal. Arvin hesitated. Each bore the likeness of a Vaynar warlord from ages past, eyes closed, hands resting on swords with blades buried in ice. These are not statues, Arvin said quietly. No, Alrek murmured. They are kings who never died. At the bottom of the stair was a vast cavern, its ceiling lost to darkness, its floor made of black ice. Rows upon rows of sarcophagi lined the space, carved from glacial stone, wrapped in iron bands etched with cold fire runes. Each bore a name, a sigil, a bloodline. The Icebound, warlords of the Old North, generals of the Frostfall War, monsters to the south, saints to the north. Alrek stepped to the center and knelt beside a great basin filled with frozen water. Above it, chained in a circle of ice, hung the last crown of winter, a circlet forged from weirbone and glass steel, once worn only in times of total war. Alrek bled again, this time from his wrist. The blood struck the basin. The ice cracked. One by one, the sarcophagi shuddered. Orvin stepped back. Gods! The air thickened, and frost crept up the walls. A scream echoed, not from one voice, but from many, shattered, fragmented, ancient. Then the lids began to rise. The first to emerge was Lord Halrun the Pale, his face skeletal, his eyes two pale stars burning from deep sockets. His armor was rimed with frost, his sword fused to his gauntlet. He looked at Alrek as though no time had passed. "We are summoned," Halrun said. Alrek nodded. "The flame rises, the throne weeps," Halrun replied. "And we are cold, Mercy." Behind him others rose, one by one, 100, 200, 500. Their eyes glowed, their breath was snow, their voices a choir of the dead. The Icebound had returned. Above, as dawn broke over Galaspire, ravens took flight, thousands of them, scattering across the land in every direction, carrying a single message carved in ancient runes: the North marches. Far to the east, Kaela felt the cold even in her dreams. Her skin prickled with a frost she could not shake. In her mind she saw snow swallowing fire and a voice whispering through the dark. "You wake flames in a world of ice." But even fire forgets warmth when winter is long enough. She opened her eyes. The shard in her palm pulsed once, and far beneath the world something old smiled. The city of Veilguard, capital of Dragorn and seat of the Black Throne, had not known silence in 10 years. It was not the silence of peace, but of tension, a quiet between storms. The stone streets echoed with the clatter of mercenary boots, foreign tongues bartering in shadowed alleys, and whispers of war drifting like smoke from the gilded towers. In the citadel's high chamber, Regent Howrick Thorn stared into his reflection in a goblet of wine. His hands trembled. "The letters grow bolder," he muttered. "Kaela sends threats. Alrek raises the dead. Cyrene sharpens her knives. The tide brings Valera." His steward stood nearby, stiff with discomfort. "Perhaps your grace should summon the crown electors. A vote may." Howrick slammed the goblet down. "There is no vote. There is only survival." He stood, robes falling askew. "The throne is empty by design. If one house sits it, the others will burn the realm to stop them. That is why I have ruled. That is why I must continue." He moved to the great window overlooking the square of crows. The Black Throne stood at the hall's center, still untouched, its jagged shape casting long shadows on the polished obsidian floor. "It watches me," Hallrick whispered, "every night. I dream of it whispering, laughing." The steward did not speak. "Find me swords," Hallrick said finally. "Foreign, cheap, dangerous. I don't care if they're pirates, cannibals, or God's damn children. The others gather theirs. I will gather mine. The others gather theirs. I will gather mine." Beyond the walls of Veilguard, camps were rising like weeds. Valera's fleet had docked in the western harbor despite no ships having been seen approaching. They simply appeared. Sailors spoke of sails made from skin, of masts carved from drowned trees, and a flag of seafoam bearing no sigil, only the black spiral of the tide. She walked through the camp like a ghost, hooded, cloaked in shadow and salt. Around her, no guards. None were needed. Her army was loyal not by oath, but by transformation. Those who followed her bore gills, webbed fingers, pale, lidless eyes that never blinked. They whispered to water and slept beneath the tide. Cyrene had sent her a crown, a sleek thing of black pearl and silver, and Valera had cast it into the sea. "I do not wear chains," she said, "even gilded ones." Still she came, to claim nothing, to destroy everything. To the east, House Maelwind's banners arrived at the edge of Veilguard, long lines of silver-eyed soldiers, their faces painted with the tears of the drowned. Cyrene did not ride at their front. She rode within, veiled, her litter carried by 6 silent, blindfolded men. Her spies were already at work. 10 gold-marked couriers never made it to the gates. 14 guards found strangled with smiles carved into their cheeks. And a high lord of House Telvar, poisoned in his sleep, his blood turned to ink. In the dark chambers beneath the city, Cyrene met with her agents. Maps sprawled across the table, sigils circled, arrows drawn. "She marches from the east," whispered her left hand, a woman with no tongue. "And the north?" Cyrene asked. "They come, cold and slow, but they come." Cyrene exhaled slowly, resting her chin against pale fingers. "Let them." Kaela Dravith camped just south of the river Lethe, her host now 20,000 strong. Knights of the Iron Valley, riders from the Flame March. Even the sword maidens of Hollowspire walked among her ranks, their faces scarred with fire oaths, their eyes alight with purpose. She stood beside her war tent, grief strapped to her back, speaking with her captains. "We take the city by storm," said Rennick. "Breach the walls before the others do. The north is slow. The sea cannot scale walls. The widow waits." Kaela looked toward the distant skyline of Veilguard, where the towers glimmered like knives in the moonlight. "No," she said. "We wait." The captains looked shocked. "My lady, we let them come. All of them, Ulrich, Cyrene, Valera, the regent." She turned, fire in her eyes. "Let them bleed each other in the streets. Then I will walk through the ashes." The crows came first, hundreds of them, then thousands. They arrived in swarms that blackened the sky over Veilguard, roosting on spires, choking the chimneys of temples, and watching from every ledge and gate. The common folk muttered prayers with their heads down. Old women whispered omens from behind shuttered windows. Children cried in the alleys and dreamed of wings and blood. The throne was calling. In the Tower of High Flame, once the seat of the old king's court, Sir Duran Thorn stood with his sword across his knees. He was not praying. He had long ago abandoned the gods, but he was listening to the sound of crows. They cawed in bursts, but it was more than noise. It was rhythm, a pulse. 3 caws, 1 pause, 2 caws, 1 pause. A pattern. He rose and paced the room. The sky outside darkened further as storm clouds gathered from the south. War was no longer coming. It had arrived. Outside the walls of Veilguard, the first banners flew high. Dravith, Vanar, Maelwind, the undrowned, each house, each army, had arrived within the same week. Scouts reported minor skirmishes along the southern farms, raiders clashing with sellswords, mercenaries killing each other for coin. Scouts found frozen, burned, or drowned in their saddles. Still, none had reached the city. The regent had barred the gates. Veilguard stood, sealed and silent. Ser Daron approached the war table. The Vanar sigil. "Still they wait," he muttered. "Still he does not strike." Far across the frozen plain to the north, Lord Ulrich Vanar sat beneath a pavilion of ice, a cloak of white wolf fur draped over his shoulders. His men, the icebound, stood in perfect stillness behind him. Not a cough, not a twitch, just breath misting in the cold. He studied the skyline of Veilguard with expressionless eyes. "The city is already dying," he said. "Sir Arvin stirred. The others make camp." "He." They test each other, but do not commit. They wait to see who breaks first. Aurek's hand closed around a frost-bladed dagger. Let them, he turned to his quartermaster. Begin the ritual. The man paled. All the way, yes. Within the hour, 12 of the icebound formed a perfect circle outside the city's northern wall. They cut their palms and let blood drip into the snow. They sang in a language that cracked the stones beneath their feet. Above them, the sky dimmed. Ah! The wind turned to ice. A white mist crawled toward the walls, and still Aurek waited. In the western reaches, the Lyra watched from the shattered prow of her ship the teeth of the sea. Her eyes glowed faintly now, silver, unfocused. She whispered to the tide. Behind her, the tide answered. She reached into a basin filled with seawater and bone, and cast one shard of Maelwyn silver into the deep. It vanished. Moments later, in the Maelwyn encampment, a woman's head exploded into mist, one of Cyrene's spies. No one saw what had struck her. Valera smiled. Her webs fray, she murmured. A voice, deep and echoing like the ocean trench, replied from nowhere. And yours tighten. I will not be chained again, Valera hissed. No, said the voice. Shh! You will chain the world. In the southern fields, Kaela walked among her troops in silence. Her soldiers rose and saluted as she passed, though their eyes lingered longer than they should. Word had spread. She did not sleep. She did not eat. Her blade sometimes smoked when drawn. And once, when a would-be assassin crept into her tent, he burst into flames before he reached her. Kaela walked to the top of a hill and stared down at the city of Veilguard. They are here, Rennick said, appearing beside her. All of them. Yes, she replied, as they were meant to be, and the regent, hiding behind walls. That won't save him. She knelt and placed her hand to the earth. It was warm, still warm. The shard beneath her skin pulsed once. Let them come, she whispered. Let the throne decide who is worthy. Twilight hung over Veilguard like a blade on the edge of falling. The sky burned violet, blood-red clouds sinking toward the spires like the lid of a tomb. The winds changed. The crows had gone silent, and far outside the eastern gate the first sword was drawn. It began not with trumpets, but with suspicion. 2 scout riders, one bearing the silver serpent of Maelwyn, the other the golden lion of Draveth, crossed paths too close to the red marsh. They stared at each other, neither speaking, tension stiff as steel. Then one drew, no one remembered who. But by dusk, 20 men were dead. By nightfall, 200, and by morning the war had begun. The first true clash came beneath the shadow of the old aqueduct, a crumbling ruin from the days of the first ground. Cyrene's forward detachment, led by her bastard niece, Lady Alia, moved to seize it, the high ground, the water, the passage. Kaela Draveth had other plans. The 2 forces met just before the last light faded. Cyrene's soldiers wore scaled armor and masks carved like grieving faces. Their shields bore alchemical sigils, protection charms written in old blood. They moved in silence, blades curved, movements snake-like. Kaela's vanguard rode with torchlight in their eyes. The sword maidens of Hollowspire walked at the front, bare-armed and painted in ash, humming a chant that made even the bravest men flinch. When they collided, the air itself seemed to recoil. Steel met steel, fire met poison. Kaela was in the center, her blade grief flashing like lightning, carving a path through masked soldiers. Blood sprayed, bones split. Lady Alia met her near the broken pillar. "You are not welcome here," she hissed. Kaela didn't reply. She struck. Their blades clashed once, twice. Sparks flew. Then Kaela stepped forward, twisted, and drove her knee into Alia's ribs. The woman fell. Her mask cracked. Her lips bled ink. Kaela looked down at her with something like pity. Then she turned and left her alive. "Let her crawl back to Cyrene," she said to Rennick. "Let her remember what fire feels like." By midnight, the Maelwyn line had broken. The aqueduct belonged to Draveth. Far to the north of the city, beneath a moonlit field of frost, Ulrich Vaynor made no move to advance. His army stood motionless, 10,000 strong, pale and glimmering beneath a sheet of rime. But the icebound were not idle. "What?" Their whispers carried on the wind, seeping into camps, curling into tents. Soldiers awoke screaming, their lips blue. Horses went mad, fires sputtered out. Wherever the mist crept, warmth died. And still Ulrich waited. Sir Arvin stepped beside him. "She burns the field," Arvin said, "but she's distracted now. This is our moment." Ulrich's eyes remained fixed on the city walls. "No, not yet." Arvin's breath caught. "She grows stronger by the day." Arvin's breath caught. "She grows stronger by the day." Every death makes the host bolder. Every grave gives us voice. When the gates fall, the dead will walk inside, not before. Within Veilguard, the regent stared at the fires beyond his walls with wide, sleepless eyes. They were everywhere now. 4 armies, 4 flames. His council had collapsed. His allies were ghosts. Even the throne room had grown cold. He could no longer enter it. "I am still the regent," he whispered. "They cannot claim what I protect." "But they am still the regent," he whispered. "They cannot claim what I made." "Lock," the stones whispered, and when he turned, there was a raven inside his chamber, staring, watching. Meanwhile, Cyrene Melwyn moved through her camp like a shadow. She did not rage. She did not weep. She wrote a single name over and over in red ink. "Kayela, Kayela, Kayela." Beside her, her pet alchemist stirred a bowl of black resin. "She must pay," he said. "She will," Cyrene replied. "She will," Cyrene replied. "She will," Cyrene replied. "She is strong, so is fire," Cyrene said softly. Until water found its way in, she sealed the parchment with a wax crest. Not her house sigil, but a glyph of old magic, one not spoken of in civil courts. Then she handed it to the alchemist. "Take it to the tomb of King's Reach. Bury it in the hollow heart of the last unburned king. Then run." He paused. "And if it speaks, do not listen." On the ridge overlooking it all, Kayla watched the fires dance. And the shard in her palm was warm again. The city walls glowed in the distance. The throne waited behind them. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Soon." The first gate fell just before dawn. It wasn't fire. It wasn't steel. It was rot. The old eastern wall of Veilguard, built in the days of the First Crown, had withstood 4 wars and 6 sieges. It had held against giants, trebuchets, and even dragonflame, but it could not stand against what Cyrene had summoned. From beneath the crypts of Kingsreach, something rose. It was not seen, not fully, but the guards along the eastern battlements screamed for less than a minute. Then the wall groaned, deep and sick, like wood soaked in blood, and split from its base to its parapets. Stone turned soft, mortar cracked, metal screamed as it corroded mid-breath. By the time the sun kissed the towers, the eastern gate had fallen inward, opening like a yawning mouth. And Veilguard, the unbreached, was breached. Gaela Draveth stood at the front of her column when the horns blew. She had been waiting. Rennick rode up beside her, his face pale. "They've done it," he said. "The gate is open." Kaela nodded. "Let Cyrene bleed first," she said. "You don't want to strike?" "I want the throne," she replied. "Not rubble. Let them spill their blades. We walk in over corpses." But her soldiers stirred behind her, eager, restless. The soldiers stirred behind her, eager, restless. The Iron Valley banners fluttered. "Hold them," Kayla ordered. "Anyone crosses the field without my word loses their head." Rennick hesitated. "They may turn on you." Kayla turned, her eyes burning faintly gold. "Then let them try." At the broken gate, the Maelwyn host entered first. Cyrene stayed in her litter, carried by blindfolded men. Her forward scouts swept into the city, taking the lower quarter slums, markets, abandoned villas. Some doors opened with bribes, others with knives. No resistance, no soldiers, no sign of the regent, and that was what disturbed Cyrene most. "Empty," she murmured. Alia, her wounded niece, now masked in silver to hide her ruined cheek, approached on foot. "We took the square. No blood, no victory either," Cyrene said. "He's hiding, or watching." She turned her head toward the hill. "Or watching." She turned her head toward the hill. Or waiting. On the northern plain, the icebound moved. At first, it seemed like mist. The air froze in their wake. The grass turned white. The trees cracked. Ulrich rode at their front, not on a horse, but on a great beast born of the frost, a stag made of bone and snow, its antlers glimmering with blue flame. The city loomed ahead, and its walls were broken. "Now," Ulrich said. The dead marched. Belira saw it from the tower of the old lighthouse, now reclaimed as her watchpost. She stood barefoot in a shallow basin of seawater, her reflection shifting as if alive. Third memory Chakuath, a Podin Dapuachakuath. "They open the way," whispered the voice in the tide. "I know," she replied. "They will turn on each other, as they always do. Will you take your place?" Valera looked down at the tide basin. A thin stream of blood now dripped from her left eye. "Not pain, just prophecy. I don't need to take it," she said. "They'll give it to me when there's nothing left. In the lower city, Cyrene's troops spread fast. Too fast." The next disappeared entirely. Cyrene sent her last trusted assassin whispers, called her Vine into the smoke to find them. Vine did not scream, but the sounds she made before she died were worse. Cyrene rose from her litter and walked into the dark herself, flanked by 4 shadow guards. The old forge was broken, its chimney a snapped neck. Inside, walls peeled like skin. Blood painted the stones in symbols no one had written in centuries, and standing in the center of it all was a man. Lard. Pale, wearing a mask shaped like the Black Throne, his eyes were sewn shut. And yet he looked at her. "Lady Maelwyn," he said, his voice like wind over bones. She drew no blade. "You are late. We never left." Behind him 12 more stepped from the smoke, each wearing the same sewn mask. Cyrene narrowed her eyes. "You serve the throne. We are its memory. Then remember this. If you strike me, you doom the line of Maelwyn." That line ended the moment you bled the king's crypt for ink. He raised his hand. The guards around her screamed and turned to ash. Cyrene did not scream. She smiled. "You should have come sooner." She dropped a vial from her sleeve. A black flame burst outward, and she vanished into it. By nightfall, 3 armies were inside Veilguard, and none of them had yet found the throne. It was not where they expected. Not at the peak of the citadel, not in the great hall, not behind walls. No, the throne had moved. No one knew how. No one knew when. But when Kaela finally crossed the broken causeway into the city, blood on her boots, blade warm at her side, she felt it. She turned toward the old temple of the sevenfold flame. The doors had opened themselves, and inside something waited. The temple of the sevenfold flame was older than Veilguard itself. "Ay-yi! Ay-yi! Why-yi!" It had been built not by kings, but by flame walkers, those ancient fire-born priests who claimed to speak to the bones of the world. Once it had been a place of prophecy, then a place of execution, then silence. No one had entered its doors in a generation until tonight. Kaela stood at the threshold, the great bronze gates yawning wide as if the stone itself had bent to her will. The air that flowed from within was not warm. It was suffocating. Not heat. Weight. Her captain stood behind her, unsure, uneasy. Rennick whispered, "This wasn't on any map." Kaela didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the darkness within. Then she stepped inside. The door closed behind her without a sound. Inside, the temple was still. The walls, once covered in flame-gilded murals, were scorched black. Statues lined the hall, tall and eyeless, each carved in different poses of agony. Beneath them, cracked tiles bore the marks of burnt offerings, old blood, older bones. She walked forward. Her boots echoed, then stopped echoing. Sound didn't carry her. Light didn't settle. Even her own breath felt distant. But she heard something else. Not words, whispers, not in her ears, in her bones. "Kaela." She did not flinch. At the far end of the temple was no altar, no sacred relic. Only a pool of black glass, motionless and mirror-smooth, set into the stone floor. She approached it slowly. She saw a girl made of fire, her skin cracked and glowing, her hair flickering like a torch. She saw the same girl, now older, weeping in chains, buried beneath ash. She saw herself in a throne of bone, surrounded by corpses, wearing a crown made of screams. And finally, she saw a figure, faceless, offering her a flame. She reached toward the water. It burst into fire. Outside, the storm broke. The clouds split, not white but crimson, and rain began to fall. Not water. Ash. In the streets, the Maelwyn forces pulled back toward the western walls. Cyrene was missing. Her second in command had been found twisted, spine reversed, mouth stitched shut. Her army hesitated. In the east, Kaela's soldiers advanced, but they did not fight. They simply watched the sky, watched the fire on the temple roof. Rennick stood alone now, his eyes wide. "She found it," he whispered. She found it. In the north quarter, the icebound reached the city walls. Ulrich led them forward, the mist parting before his step. His stag of frost snorted steam. The bodies in the street turned their heads. Dead men blinked. Bones shifted. Graves cracked. The dead did not resist him. They joined. Arvin rode up beside him, his face pale. "The flame has answered." Ulrich nodded once. Then the ice must reply. He raised his hand. Ulrich nodded. One thin time. In the drowned quarter near the docks, the Lyra opened her arms as the ash fell. Around her, the undrowned hummed a song not meant for surface ears. She closed her eyes, listened. The waves shifted. The tide rose without wind. A single ship emerged from beneath the water. No crew, just a helm carved with the image of the throne, its arms spiraling into tentacles. She smiled. The voice came not from the fire now, but from all around her. "Do you know what you are?" She didn't answer. "You are not queen, not heir, not conqueror. You are the door." And suddenly she remembered. All of it. The dreams, the shard, the fire in the mountain. It had not chosen her to rule. It had chosen her to open. She rose, her eyes glowing now. Not gold, but white. The fire had vanished, but the pool of black glass remained. But the pool of black glass remained. Ye. On this time, it opened. Not down, but out. Reality warped. Stones split. And something beyond comprehension stirred. Kaela didn't scream. She smiled. "I accept." At that moment, across the city, every torch went out. Every shadow deepened. The Game of Thrones ended. And the true game, older than kings, older than fire, began. The temple cracked open like a chrysalis. From the outside, it looked like a tower folding in on itself. Stone curling upward like petals in reverse, bronze melted and dripping from its spires. Onigar. You and dripping from its spires. Fire pulsed from every fracture, but it was not warm. It flickered black. The ash storm over Veilguard stopped in an instant. Midair, frozen, time itself seemed to inhale. And in the next breath, Kaela Draveth stepped from the ruin. But she was no longer the same. Her armor had fused to her skin, a living sheath of smoldering steel etched with moving runes. Her eyes were twin embers, flickering not with flame, but with void light. Her shadow moved differently from her body, slower, whispering across the stone like oil on glass. The shard in her palm was gone. The throne had taken it back and left her in its image. Rennick dropped to one knee without being told. "So it's true," he whispered. You sat the throne." Kaela looked past him toward the towers of the citadel. "No," she said, "the throne sat me." Far above, in the highest room of Veilguard's keep, the regent watched through a shattered mirror. "Gone." His hand shook. His mouth was dry. "She is touched," he muttered. "Tainted. That thing is not Kaela." He turned to the guards behind him. 2 remaining knights of his once great house. "Kill her," he said. "Now, before she opens the door any wider." Neither man moved. He raised his voice. "I gave you land, titles, loyalty." One of the knights, an older man named Sir Jorik, stepped forward. "My lord," he said softly, "we are no longer kings." Storik stepped forward. "We are no longer kings." "You don't understand what she's become." "We do," said the other knight, removing his helmet. "We saw it in our dreams. The throne sent it ahead, a warning." Then he drew his sword and turned it on the regent. In the square below the temple, fire rippled outward from Kaela's bare feet. Not consuming, not burning, rewriting. Pavement became molten. Statues cracked and wept. Banners burst into ash midair, and every soldier who watched her knew no sword could stop her now. Even Auric Venar from his icy perch paused as his army reached the outer gates. He had felt it the moment she stepped out. "She has become what the throne remembers," he said quietly. Arvin whispered, "Can we defeat that?" Auric didn't answer. He turned away from the gate. "Call back the host." "My lord, she's not fire. She is not Kaela. She is the end of endings." In the western slums, Cyrene Maelwyn emerged from shadow. Face pale, breath shallow. Face pale, Vigard Brecken, Jendel, Vigard Recken, Arno, Athano. Maelwyn emerged from shadow. A Falcon, the Vigard Wicken. The spell she cast beneath the king's crypt had worked. But she had not understood what it would unleash. I thought it would destroy her, she said to no one. Valera appeared behind her, unannounced, barefoot on blood-slick cobbles. It did, she said softly, but something wore her bones like a cloak. Cyrene turned. You saw it? I felt it. They stood in silence for a moment, enemies, watching something too large for blades. She'll break the balance, Cyrene whispered. Ka! Valera stepped forward. She already has. Then she held out her hand. No more poison, no more war. The sea bends, the north freezes, the throne burns. If we don't act, we drown together. Cyrene hesitated. Then, slowly, she took the hand. Kaela walked through Veilguard like a storm in human form. At the center of the citadel, the black throne waited. But it was not empty. It was watching. When she stepped into the hall, the flames in the braziers guttered. And the throne! A twisted, jagged crown of obsidian and whisper metal pulsed. She didn't hesitate. She approached it and knelt. And for the first time in remembered history, the throne knelt back. Stone bent. Iron sighed. Beneath the city, in chambers older than language, a drum began to beat. In the far north, the snow stopped falling. In the deepest ocean trench, a wall of coral cracked open. In every place where truth had once been buried, something began to rise. And Kaela, no longer Kaela, opened her mouth. What came out was not a scream. It was a name the world had tried to forget, a name no one alive had ever spoken, the name of the first ruler, the name of the first ruler, the name of the flame before time. Veyrak. The black throne pulsed, and Dragorn changed forever. The ash continued to fall, not in flakes, but in long strands like torn parchment, twisting in the air. The sky had dimmed to a permanent twilight over Veilguard. The sun was no longer visible, only a deep amber glow, as if seen through smoke. The black throne had spoken. The black throne had spoken. Kaela had named it. And now, across the dying city, 4 powers stirred. In the north, Alric Vaynor stood atop the frost-cracked battlements of the captured granary quarter, his fur-lined cloak hanging still despite the bitter wind. Around him, the icebound murmured in low, frost-bitten tones, their eyes dimmer now, their bones stiffening with something other than cold, fear. She speaks in the old tongue, Arban said, his voice hushed. Not Maelwind script, not even Hollowspire fire tongue, something older, something we buried. We never buried it, Alric said. We imprisoned it. We let it sleep beneath our oaths, beneath memory. She is not Kaela Draveth anymore. No, Alric said quietly. She is Veyrak, the name before kings. He turned to his men. No banners, no charges, no battle. You mean to retreat? Alric shook his head. I mean to kneel. And with that, the last warlord of the north sheathed his blade and began walking, alone, toward the center of the city. To the west, where brine laced the alleyways and every stone sweated with sea salt, Valera sat cross-legged in a circle of barnacle-marked blades. Her people, the undrowned, had begun to dissolve back into the earth, their skin shedding like old kelp, their tide song faltering. The sea no longer answered, because something deeper had spoken. She changed the current, murmured Valera. A girl no older than 12, web-fingered and gilled, crawled to her side. Rel! Mother Sea is quiet now. She waits, Valera said. For what? Valera looked toward the glowing skyline where the throne pulsed faintly beneath the smoke. For judgment, she stood. Gather what remains. Not warriors, witnesses. The girl blinked her silver eyes. To witness what? Valera smiled for the first time in her life. Where the gods bleed. In the shadows beneath the citadel, Cyrene Maelwind knelt before an obsidian mirror that showed no reflection. She had cut her own palm to see it speak. Blood dripped down her wrist, pooling into the carved runes at its base. But the mirror said nothing. It only shimmered. You made her, whispered a voice behind her, raspy, serpentine. I tried to break her, Cyrene replied, but the throne was waiting for a gate, not a queen. The voice hissed, and now it speaks through her. I know. What will you do? Forged of Maelwind steel, dipped in poison from the roots beneath Marrowmere, unused for 23 years. I will do what I have always done, Cyrene whispered. Survive! And in the depths of the temple, Kaela sat cross-legged upon the stone just beneath the throne's feet. Her skin no longer bled, her breath no longer steamed. She neither ate nor drank. She listened. Around her the walls had reshaped. They no longer formed a hall. They formed a mouth. They formed a mouth. The throne pulsed above her, every so often releasing a low, resonant beat, like a heart forged in stone. In the silence between, she heard whispers, from kings who had never been crowned, from generals who burned their names, from children sacrificed so the black throne could speak. "You are not the last," one voice said, "but you are the first to understand." Kayela opened her eyes. They no longer had pupils. "I see you now," she said to the stone. "I see what you want. Do you reject it?" asked the flame. She smiled. "No, I make it my own." That evening, in the shattered plaza of the old palace gardens, the 4 remaining forces arrived. Ulrich, Valera, Serene, Kayla waited there already, seated not on a throne, but on bare stone. No guards flanked her, no banners flew, only fireflies of ash dancing in the air. None spoke at first, until Kayla raised her head. "You have all come," she said softly. Ulrich bowed. Valera tilted her head in respect. Cyrene said nothing. Kayla's gaze settled on each in turn. "You all wanted power," she said, "the crown, the war, the kingdom." Her eyes glowed. "I wanted none of it." She stood. "I wanted freedom, and the throne gave me that. Now I offer you the same." The air trembled. "No more children burn for banners." She stepped forward. "You may swear yourselves now, not to me, but to truth, or you may die while you stand." Ulrich drew his blade and placed it on the ground. Valera removed her crown of shells and scattered it into the dust. Cyrene looked at them both. Then slowly she stepped forward and extended her hand. The moment Cyrene Maelwyn's hand extended toward Kayela, time seemed to fracture. Ash, frozen mid-air, swirled downward once again. The ground beneath the 4 claimants cracked faintly, not with violence but with finality. The earth itself listening. Kayela did not take Serene's hand. She looked at it, studied it, and then, in a voice colder than the northern wind, she asked, "Do you offer this freely?" Serene hesitated, just slightly, then nodded. "Who cut the tongues of our own servants to keep their silence?" Cyrene's hand remained steady. "And I offer penance." Kayela's eyes narrowed. "You don't believe in gods. So to whom do you offer penance? To the world I helped break." A pause, long, taut. Then Kayela stepped forward and grasped Cyrene's hand. The ash brightened around them, and for one heartbeat, the world felt still. Mange. "Oh!" But across the plaza, hidden in the crowd of watching survivors, soldiers, wanderers, the dying and the hopeful, someone moved, a figure in the robes of a dead septon, carrying a small object no larger than a fruit, a seed, a blackened stone, a relic of a kingdom lost to time, not a weapon, a memory. They whispered words in a tongue no one had spoken aloud in 1,000 years, words that carved holes in air and thought, a curse older than fire, and the relic bloomed, not with flowers, but with flame. Valera saw it first. Her sea-born eyes shimmered. "Down!" she screamed. Kayela turned, just as the fire exploded. It was not a bomb, not magic. It was a scream of history, a wail of all the forgotten, the betrayed, the executed, the cursed flame, uncontrolled, ancient, pure. It struck Kayela full in the chest. The plaza was torn apart. Ulrich was flung backwards into a marble pillar, bones cracking. Valera shielded a child behind her cloak of brine and bone. Cyrene was thrown across the ash-covered lawn, her robes burning. When the fire cleared, Kayela stood, still, but wounded. A searing hole glowed in the center of her chest, and the flame within her flickered wildly. No longer serene, no longer bound. She staggered, breathed smoke, then dropped to one knee. "No," Valera gasped, running forward. "No, no, no!" Kayela looked up at her, eyes dim. "I knew," she whispered, "there would be one last play." "The throne always demands one more." "Who did this?" Ulrich roared, struggling to stand. The assassin was already gone, dissolved into ash. No name, no face, only the relic left behind, still warm. Kayla coughed once, blood and light. She turned to Serene, now kneeling beside her. "You," Serene whispered, "you weren't meant to fall." Still pulsing. "I need a keeper," she said. "Someone who does not want it." Her eyes turned to Valera. The sea witch froze. "No." "Yes," Kaela said. "You know what it is to carry weight you never asked for." Valera's jaw tightened. "I am not worthy." "Exactly," Kaela smiled faintly. "That's why you'll protect it." She placed the shard in Valera's hands, and her body collapsed. The throne pulsed once violently. Everyone who touched the stone that day saw something. A baby carried through fire, a queen strangled by her own crown, a lion devoured by frost, a sea that swallowed the sun, a girl sitting quietly in the ruins of a shattered world, smiling. And then it passed. The ash fell again, this time soft like snow. Later, no one could agree on what happened next. Some say Kaela's body vanished, taken by the throne. Others swear she was carried to the sea by Valera and given to the tide. But one thing was clear. The game had ended. The era of flame was over. Vena returned to the north. He rebuilt not a fortress but a school. For memory, for mercy, the icebound laid down their arms. Cyrene vanished into the swamps of Marrowmere. Some say she became a healer. Others say she became something else, a voice for the forgotten. And Valera? She never took a crown. She sailed west beyond the edge of charts, carrying the throne's last shard. But every spring, the ash returns to Veilguard, gentle, like a blessing, and children born beneath it grow strangely bright-eyed, as if something still watches, as recorded by Melis the Grey in the 9th year of the New Dawn. I write these words not as queen, nor seer, nor heir, but as one who watched the fire fall. The black throne itself is gone, dissolved, perhaps, or carried away on the tide with the woman who named it. Kaela of Draveth, last flame-bearer, daughter of war, breaker of banners, her name is forbidden in the city squares, not out of hatred, out of reverence. One does not speak the name of fire when the forest still smokes. Children ask of her. They wear makeshift crowns of burnt leaves and ask who she was and why the sun disappeared for half a day when she fell. And we tell them she was the last player in a game that broke the world, and she ended it. Vena returned to the mountain, yes, but he did not return alone. He brought with him books, relics, truths long buried. And in the cracked halls of Gallowspire, once a fortress of war, now stands the library of still flame, where even enemies may read, if they come in peace. I have been there, and I have seen him, older now, his frost-racked hands trembling as he teaches children how to read the ice runes of his ancestors. He does not speak of the throne, but sometimes, at sunset, he walks alone to the edge of the cliffs and stares south. He always returns, but never smiles. Valera of the Sea has not returned. Her ship was last seen vanishing into fog beyond the Whalebone Strait. Some say she went west to find the lands before maps. But some say she went west to find the lands before maps. Others say she lives beneath the waves now, tending to the shard. Kaela gave her like one might tend to a sleeping god. Once a year we hear the song. It comes from nowhere, from deep, cold water, and it is not language. It is reminder that the tide still remembers. And Cyrene Maelwyn, she walks, from village to village, from field to marsh, no longer veiled, no longer feared. She carries no blade, only a satchel of herbs and a flask of river tea. Some call her a ghost, some call her a witch, that in one league. But when sickness comes to a village, it is Cyrene they hope for, not the healers. She never speaks of her past. But those who look into her eyes say they glimpse something vast and deeply tired. And Veilguard, the city grows again, slower, wiser, scarred. The Black Keep stands empty, and no one dares rebuild the throne room. That space is a garden now. Wildflowers grow through the cracks in the old marble floor. The roots reach deep down into the bedrock where old blood once pooled. Sometimes the petals catch fire. They do not burn. As for me, I record. I gather the pieces. I travel with parchment and ask the last survivors of the Great War what they saw, what they dreamed, what they regret. I write not to glorify, but to warn. Because though the game is ended, the pieces remain. The crown is gone, yes, but ambition does not need crowns. It only needs silence. And so I write, so that one day, if the flame stirs again, you will know its name, and you will remember hers. Kaela, first of the last, the throne's chosen, the one who lit the world and let it live.